He was the Doctor that had the impossible task of reinventing the show and its title character while simultaneously pleasing and appealing to the show's regular viewers, and was perhaps the only actor who could have pulled off the most difficult transition in television history. But with a 119 episode run between 1966 and 1969, with 53 of those episodes sadly missing, where's the best place to start with the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton? Are you a Doctor Who fan curious about the classic series but don't know where to start, or feel overwhelmed by the whopping 695 episodes? Have no fear, as in this series I'll be taking you through a beginner's guide for all 8 classic Doctors, including 3 of my own personal story recommendations, which in my opinion give the best representation of each Doctor and their respective eras for a new viewer. I'm Ruby, aka Hoobie Jones. This is Petrol the Dalek, and you are watching the Second Doctor Explained, a Patrick Troughton era beginner's guide. After 3 and a bit seasons of William Hartnell's gruff, grumpy and often antagonistic yet loving and likeable Doctor, the arrival of Patrick Troughton, an actor at the time with an extensive CV including a wide and diverse range of characters, heralded a new era for Doctor Who, creating arguably the template for many modern Doctors to follow, with this silly yet zany and serious figure who is truly from another world. Many other Doctor Who staples were also introduced during his tenure, such as the trusty sonic screwdriver, as well as fleshing out and giving us a first proper glimpse of the Time Lords, as well as some other aspects of the Doctor and the whole process of regeneration. Patrick Troughton also has the unique honour of having a companion follow him throughout the entire run of his Doctor, as 18th century Scot Jamie McCrimmon is with the Doctor from his second story right up until his regeneration. Now before we dive into my 3 recommendations, let's talk missing episodes. I was so busy talking about the virtues of William Hartnell in the last video that I completely forgot to mention missing episodes which plagued the first 2 Doctors. It's difficult to imagine in the digital world that an entire 25-minute episode of one of the world's most popular programs and franchises ever wouldn't exist. But in the 1960s, it was a different story. You see, there was no real home media market back then, and if you didn't catch that week's Doctor Who, there was no DVD, no VHS, heck, not even a way for fans to be able to record video copies of the show to experience it ever again. And thus, if you missed Doctor Who, chances are in some cases you would literally never see that episode ever again. And thus, because of this and a whole host of other political and financial and other reasons, copies of these now classic stories were destroyed to make way for newer programmes. If you want a more in-depth look at Doctor Who's missing episodes, there are several incredible documentaries about them and how they were recovered here on YouTube. I'd particularly recommend Josh Schneers' YouTube channel for an in-depth look at the world of Doctor Who and the missing episodes. While several of these stories have been subsequently animated with the original audio for fans to enjoy, and although these animations are stunning and we are so lucky to have them and the original audio, for my recommendations I'll only be recommending stories that exist almost in their original form. Now in the last video we closed with the 10th planet and the introduction of the Cybermen, who would become the villain that Patrick Troughton would most regularly face off against during his era, with the Tin Soldiers appearing in 4 of his stories. In my opinion though, the Tomb of the Cybermen is the best of all classic Doctor Who Cybermen encounters. As the earliest surviving complete story of his run, Tomb of the Cybermen follows the classic base under siege format of the Doctor, where the Doctor, Jamie McCrimmon and new companion Victoria Waterfield land on the planet Telos and join an archaeological expedition to discover the long-lost Tomb of the Cybermen. This for me is one of the few Doctor Who stories that would work entirely on its own as a self-contained story, and would even make a great one-off horror film with the Doctor as just one of its regular characters. There are so many great moments in this story which really puts the classic in classic Doctor Who, as we have eerie traps, maniacal human villains driven by greed and a lust for power, and of course the Cybermen's eternal relentless struggle for survival. Upon broadcast, this story was heavily criticised for its portrayal of violence on children's television, with one scene showing the death of a Cyberman who oozes this white foam from his insides being particularly controversial and nasty. This story follows a formula which would be endlessly repeated during Troughton's run, and is indeed still repeated in Doctor Who to this very day, but in my mind the Tomb of the Cybermen did it the best. Up until my next pick was rediscovered in 2013, many fans, including myself, were rather indifferent towards it, but upon first viewing we saw that The Enemy of the World was a true masterpiece of science fiction television. For me, this is one of the early big idea stories in Doctor Who, something which wasn't just the Doctor fights a big monster, but was the show trying something totally new and different. The Enemy of the World sees Patrick Troughton playing both the hero as the Doctor and the villain in the evil Salamander, and honestly, I really don't want to say too much about this story because I don't want to spoil it and all its surprises and all the fun that you, the viewer, will have when you watch it. I will say that many people have described it as Doctor Who does James Bond, which it kind of is, so if the swinging 60s James Bond is your thing, you will absolutely love this story. It's also great to see how Victoria's chemistry with the Doctor has changed since the Tomb of the Cybermen, and that also makes this story a really fun watch. One of the things I really wanted to point out, but again forgot to mention in my last video, was how insane the production schedule of Doctor Who was in the 1960s. The old saying Rome wasn't built in a day could be rewritten for this era of the show, going something like, Rome wasn't built in a day, but classic Doctor Who in the 60s was. When you look at the production schedule for the show, let's say in 1967, an episode was being pretty much filmed every single week apart from a 6-week break around August, meaning they were shooting pretty much a new episode every week for 46 weeks of the year. Can you imagine the toll that would have taken on you, and having to learn that much new dialogue and take in so many new stories and ideas? Especially in the Patrick Troughton era, this becomes even more of an astonishing fact, considering how polished many stories, such as The Enemy of the World, are. If you want to see me do a full breakdown of the insane production schedule of Doctor Who in the 1960s, leave a comment below. My final story recommendation for this video is one of the best examples of Doctor Who not being constrained by the stupid boundaries of reality and logic, and just making a super fun, absolute joy of a story in The Mind Robber. For me, this story is Doctor Who meets The Wizard of Oz meets Alice in Wonderland, and has so many great scenes throughout. A basic, and I mean really basic because there's a lot to go at here, synopsis of this story would be that through a mishap with the TARDIS, the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe find themselves in another dimension outside the boundaries of reality, and must find their way through a strange world ruled by fairy tales and mythical creatures. What I really love about The Mind Robber is how everybody involved is trying so hard to make this insane idea work, and I feel like only Patrick Troughton had that perfect mixture of authority, gravitas and that sense of humour in order to carry this weird and bizarre story. Despite its silly premise, there's also some really great hard sci-fi moments in there dealing with the nature of reality itself, and the cliffhangers, especially in part 1 of this story, are so memorable and iconic, with some very creepy and weird imagery throughout. And so we've come to the end of the era of Patrick Troughton, the time in the show which proved that it could survive beyond the Daleks and William Hartnell. Behind the scenes, however, all was not well for Doctor Who, as despite the excellent quality of the story and the performances, viewing figures were down, and the production team needed to find new ways to not only bring in new viewers, but to transform the programme's dark, black and white storytelling into the vibrant colour of the 1970s and beyond. Join me in the next episode of this series, where we'll be discussing the reign of the 3rd Doctor, John Pertwee. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Who Be Jones YouTube channel.